Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. I'm Zahid Anwar, the Tech Member Advocate at UKOEG. I'll be your host today. It's a privilege to welcome two distinguished leaders, James Herbert, Oracle Business Developer Director at Sopra Steria, as well as Susan Matcha, Head of Data and AI Foundations at Sopra Steria, who both bring deep industry expertise to today's session, which is all about AI, cloud, and chaos, why data foundation matters. Any questions, please do put in the Q&A section. We will address this at the end of the webinar in a Q&A session. Without further ado, over to James and Susanna.
Thanks very much, Zahid. Just having some problems with sharing my screen. I'll just be a second getting that back up there.
No
Um,
problem.
but hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here today. Hopefully you can see my slides there now.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So yes, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Susanna Matchka. I'm Head of Data and AI Foundations at Sopra Steria. I'm joined today by my colleague, James Herbert, our Oracle Business Development Director. I have to say a big thank you to James for stepping in at the last minute to cover for our colleague, Julie, who was supposed to be presenting with me today, who is unfortunately not feeling very well. So thank you, James. I really appreciate you not leaving me on my own to do this one. So today we're going to talk about something that comes up again and again in conversations about AI, cloud, and analytics. Despite significant investment, many organizations still feel like things are becoming more complex, not simpler. They're moving faster, but not necessarily with more confidence. And that's why we've called this session AI, Cloud, and Chaos. Because what we're seeing here isn't a failure of ambition or of technology. It's that acceleration is exposing weaknesses that were already there. So over the next hour or so, I want to give you a bit of a mental model, why this happens, why data foundations matter more than ever in an AI-enabled world, and what good looks like in practice. In a way that you can take back to your own organization, in a way that feels tangible and practical, hopefully. So oops, sorry, my slides are a bit stuck. There we go. So if AI is accelerating decision making and cloud is accelerating capability, that acceleration amplifies weaknesses that were already there. The last line is really the most important one, and that's what I want to focus on today. AI and cloud don't create these problems, they just expose problems that already exist. They remove the buffers that used to hide issues like poor data quality, unclear ownership, inconsistent definitions, and fragile foundations. So if things feel a little more chaotic as you accelerate, as you start to bring in AI, it's not necessarily because you're doing the wrong thing. It's because underlying weaknesses are being surfaced. And everything I'll talk about today builds from this idea. So what are we talking about today? We'll have a quick look at the agenda. So James will be talking us through Oracle capabilities. We'll look at the acceleration challenge, why chaos persists, data strategy, data foundations, what misalignment looks like versus alignment, key takeaways from the session, and then we've got some time at the end for a Q&A, but do feel free to put your questions in the chat as we move along today as well. You don't need to wait until the end. We're going to look at, from James, how AI has been embedded from across the stack, and then I'll speak to the acceleration challenge, why data persists even in well-intentioned organizations, what we mean when we say data strategy, and how foundations are what turn strategy into something real and something tangible and something operational. As I said, we'll look at what happens when those strategy and foundations don't align, where that chaos starts to creep in. And more importantly, what changes and how you can know when things are aligned and when things are looking good. The aim of today isn't to overwhelm you with theory. I really want to give you a clear mental model that you can take away and a set of practical signals that you can use in your own organization, in your own environment, and maybe some indication and some thoughts around what to prioritize, what to fix first, and what good can look like going forwards as well. So without further ado, James, over to you.
Susanna, thank you very much, and good morning, folk. It's terrific to be here as a Sopra Steria presentation. Next slide. So, Oracle AI at every level. It's been a story that Oracle have been telling for 18 months, 2 years now. And absolutely recognise the billions of pounds that Oracle are investing in UK government in AI technology and infrastructure. Now that makes a massive difference. That huge amount of cash being invested is absolutely accelerating what that capability is. What's been interesting is how that story of AI within Oracle has been developing over the past 18 months. And we all know that Oracle is lots of different houses. And actually understanding how each of those houses, whether or not it's infrastructure, its applications, its EPM, has actually been adapting all of the time to adopt AI capabilities. It's been really interesting to see how that's now coming into focus and some of the tool sets that will be launched at AI World in 12 days' time. So what I'd like to do is discuss some of those AI components and then pull that together with what the AI data platform is about. Now, like many other folk, I spend a lot of time looking at AI. I spend a lot of time spending time sitting on Oracle, learning through their partner enablement pieces and indeed practical examples of working with customers. I confess, there are a few bits that confuse me. Am I allowed to say that? But it's interesting now how this year that story and that product positioning is really coming into focus. And I'll go through what that looks like. So yes, absolutely, Oracle AI at every level, whether or not that's infrastructure, that's applications, and from an Oracle Fusion perspective, this is AI that actually you get for free within Oracle applications. Or it's AI services, pre-built models, or it's that generative AI that you get from the large language models. But it's understanding how that large language model and how that retrieval augmented generation element actually works throughout the platform was always the bit I didn't quite understand. Next slide. So we have enterprise performance management as a tool set. And we understand that that's a headless product. It can sit across Oracle Fusion. It can sit across Oracle E-Business Suite. It could sit across Oracle, SAP, or other ERP product sets. But it's that enterprise performance management toolkit that has machine learning algorithms built in. So when you're doing your month end, when you're doing your budgeting, when you're doing forecasting, it'll understand what variance is in there. It'll understand those summaries and actually account for those within that machine learning capability. And that can sit across, as I say, any ERP product. So predictions, that modeling, that insight, and indeed that generative AI piece. Next slide. At the next level, we have Oracle Analytics Cloud, and for us older folk, Oracle Analytics Cloud, it's OBIEE, isn't it? That sat on premise. It is a bit more than that from OAC perspective. And again, you're able to have those multi-data sources. So you are able to bring data in from other sources, whether or not it's a data lake or another product, as long as you understand what the table structures are, and actually report across that enterprise layer. So it'll come through with that predictive analytics, it will come through with that machine learning, and it will come through with AI agents to assist you in that data querying capability. So our Oracle Analytics Cloud is taking us across that data set. Next slide. We then have Fusion AI Data Platform. And if folk were at the Oracle conference in December, you'll remember that Cormac and myself were discussing what it's going to be called this year. So it was called Fusion Data Intelligence. This is now the Oracle Fusion AI Data Platform. And this is the product set that is focused specifically on Oracle ERP, Oracle Fusion ERP, Oracle Fusion HCM, with its pre-built analytics. So it is only focused on Oracle Fusion. So it is interesting how these three products are actually fitting together, and how the new product, next slide, fits together. So the new product that you're going to be hearing a lot more about that Oracle are positioning is this Oracle AI Data Platform. So Oracle Data Platform is probably the glue that pulls all of these together and provides that AI semantic layer across all of the pieces. It's the AI Data Platform that enables Oracle to pull in your preferred large language model, your preferred AI engine, whether or not that's Grok, that's Cohere, it's Gemini, or indeed OpenAI with ChatGPT. Now, your organization may have a preferred option. That decision may indeed be contingent on what your security posture could be. We're well aware that security of your data is massively important, absolutely critical. But maybe having that air-gapped environment for some of the more secure sites actually means you're able to operate at that official secret level. And tool sets such as Cohere are able to provide that security around that. So we now have that Oracle Data Platform that's giving you a choice of a large language model. It's also able to bring in data from lots of other sources, whether or not that's Oracle eBusiness Suite, or it's Oracle Fusion, or indeed it's from the rest of the world. That retrieval augmented generation element is critically important to success in AI within your organization. We know that data is the fuel for AI. We know that data is the most important point for getting the results out that you're expecting. We know that Oracle has got the best products in the world for managing that data. So if data is the fuel, then the Oracle database is absolutely the fuel tank to store it in. Retrieval augmented generation is recognizing that your data is your source of information. Augmenting that with outside information provides significant context. For instance, your sales have increased dramatically over a 2-month period. What are the external factors that could be driving that? It could be weather. It could be a problem with a competitor. It could be any other external factor. So augmenting your data with context of what the wider world is doing actually is going to provide more insight into how your organization is performing. But that's not forgetting it's your data, running AI over your data. Nobody else can copy that. Nobody else can replicate that. That's the competitive advantage that any organization has. And that's the insight that any public sector body is going to will need to provide better systems and outcomes. So how do these various pieces fit together? I said at the start, I've always been slightly confused by this. Drop to the next slide. So Oracle's enterprise data AI stack sort of looks like this now. So you have the OCI AI data platform providing that lakehouse, providing that AI semantic layer, so you can be curating and trusting that enterprise data, regardless if it's coming from Fusion apps, other systems, files, or indeed external data. But that retrieval augmented element, that large language model element, is being provided, enabled at the enterprise level, and you're avoiding the challenge of deciding where does the semantic layer live. Does that semantic layer live at the Fusion data, it's not called Oracle Fusion Intelligence, what's it called again? FDI, well, even I forgot the name for it. FDI is called Oracle AI, let's call it FDI, I keep on forgetting. So FDI, does the semantic layer live there? Does it sit at Oracle Analytics Cloud? Does it sit at APM level? By actually putting it at a level where you're able to manage that has that relationship with the third-party large language models, and then providing that security around that data, either your data as well as the data in, it's an emerging story But I think this is clearly the direction of travel that Oracle is going in. And for me, it properly clarified and gave me proper understanding about how do all of these different elements and products that Oracle provides, enterprise data layer actually starts to inform what that's about. Now, we talked a lot about data, and I've explained that data is the fuel. Hands around the table, I'm sure all of us at some point have or nearly put in diesel into a petrol car, or I've stood at the petrol station trying to put 4-star into my electric car. It doesn't work. So if data is the fuel, it's actually making sure you've got the right fuel. And no matter how crackerjack the technology is that you've got, and Oracle has got some crackerjack tools, absolutely, we're all here because we know that. But unless you've got the right fuel feeding it, you're not going to go anywhere. And as Susanna said at the start, we're going really quickly here. We are going really quickly. And that's the component that exposes the gaps. If you're not putting the right fuel into the engine, you're going to fall over really quickly. Not only are you going to fall over because you're not getting the right results, you're going to fall over because you're not going to get the business outcomes from democratizing capability. You're not going to get the right results from the point of view of compliance with AI legislation that, although isn't in the UK, is sitting at a Europe level. And lots of organizations are recognizing that, yeah, I've got some rules to follow here. And if you're not putting the right fuel in, you're not going to follow the rules. And that could be costly from fines, costly from poor decision making, costly from a customer perspective, citizen perspective. So that's why Sopra Steria takes the approach of great tools, best in the world. Oracle has got that. But unless you're using those tools with great data, you're going to be wasting your time. And this is why I need to hand over to Susanna now, who is the expert on how do you arrive at that point of the right fuel at the right point.
Thanks, James. It's really great to hear more about the different Oracle technologies, to be honest. It's not something that I'm a specialist in, so it's been really interesting to hear that. So thank you for that. So yes, as I said at the beginning, I'm Susanna Matchka. I'm head of data and AI foundations at Sopra Steria. A lot of my role is spent talking to clients about how they can get the most out of their data, things that they already hold and don't necessarily know what to do with, and what a realistic AI ambition looks like for them, and how that journey starts and how they get to where they would like to be. Fundamentally, we're trying to solve business problems and help organizations to better realize their strategy and have better outcomes from the work that they do. So from this point on, I'm going to shift the conversation away a bit around the specifics of technology and features around technology, and focus on why organizations struggle to get value from their technology. Because by the time AI enters the conversation, the real success factors are already in play or are already missing. So what I'll talk about now applies whether you're early in your journey or whether you're well advanced and on that road towards AI. The pattern is remarkably consistent that we're seeing. When foundations are strong, AI accelerates progress, it delivers results, it delivers return on value. But when those foundations are weak, AI accelerates confusion. So I want to start by touching on AI readiness and the AI readiness challenge. Many organizations are really keen to adopt AI. I think a lot of people think everyone else is doing it, so I need to get on board with it. And from someone who speaks to lots of different businesses, that isn't always the case. But lots of people are very keen to get on with AI and bring that in, but they really lack clarity on whether they're ready to do this. Readiness is often framed as a technology question. So do we have the right platforms? Do we have the right tools, the right models, the right skills? But in reality, the readiness for this is much broader than that. And this is a framing that we use quite often with our clients. We call it our 6-pillar approach to AI readiness. And we find it really lands with a lot of clients actually, and helps to show that this isn't just a technology problem. It's not just an IT problem. It spans all across the business and the organization. It spans infrastructure, skills, organization, the culture, governance, ethics, ways of working. But at the center of all of that really sits data. Accurate, complete, and consistent data is absolutely essential. If insights and automation delivered by analytics products are going to be high quality, trusted, and actionable, if people don't trust the output that they're getting, they won't use it. And if they don't use it, the investment doesn't translate into value. There's also a risk angle to think about here as well. So when organizations move from the more common traditional human to human, or even human in the loop analysis, to more automated recommendations or actions, the tolerance for ambiguity really drops. People want to know exactly what the data is being used for, what it means, how reliable it is, where it's coming from. Because you can't see the process and because you can't just go and ask someone, oh, how did you get that number? It can become a real black box very quickly, which means that you need to have absolute trust in the data, or you need to be able to explain how you came to the numbers that you got to. And if you don't know what that data is being used for, how the calculations have been done, what it means and how reliable it is, you can either end up blocking progress completely because nobody trusts the data, or worse, you are just blindly making decisions based on data that you can't prove whether it's right or not. The key message for me here really is data isn't just one pillar of readiness, it underpins everything. If your foundations are weak, every other readiness pillar becomes harder to realize. So from your culture to your strategy to your governance, it's all just made much more difficult if that data isn't there underpinning it. This slide captures what we see most often when organizations accelerate. Data silos are one of the really common things that we see with clients. Information is inaccessible or heavily restricted, and it prevents growth and it forces teams into workarounds, some weird and wacky workarounds that we see as well. It means you can only report on one part of your business at the time. So maybe you can report on finance, but you can't report on orders, or you can't report on new contracts, or you can't report on how your resources are performing. You can only get one view at a time if your data is in silos. Some of the other things we see, inconsistent data flows, so where different parts of the organization get different answers to the same question. I think this one's 7, I think it's 9, and nobody really knows why or how that came to. So that creates confusion, it creates politics, and it causes delays around decision making as well. And, again, this isn't just a technology problem. Skill shortages can cause problems around data foundations as well. So if people don't feel confident in using data tools and interacting with data, it becomes something that just a small group of people within the organization do. There's a data team and they're the only ones who can do it, and they're the only ones who can get value out of it. When really it should be something that the whole organization can use confidently. You don't want to bottleneck this by saying only this team of specialists can get this information. You want to be able to democratize access and interactions with data across the business so everyone feels that they know the rules of the game, they know the bounds, they know the guardrails, but they know how to get what they need out of it as well. Poor data quality is a massive one, especially for more legacy organizations who've been gathering data over 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it might be, and sort of stockpiling this data and never really doing anything with it. And by poor data quality, I mean inaccurate, incomplete, missing, inconsistent data, and that can really undermine trust in reporting and analytics as well. Often we see that there's no feedback loop. So I'm sure at some point in everyone's career, they've had that job where they have to pull together a report and send it to somebody by a certain time on a Friday normally. And you think, what do they do with that report? Where does it go? Is it just something to keep me busy? What has it been used for? And that's really an example of having no feedback loop. So when data only flows in one direction, people can't improve data quality, they can't address any issues, they can't make decisions based on it because there's no feedback in place. We don't know what it's been used for, how useful it is as well. An unclear data strategy where there's so much to do that nobody really knows what to do, where to start, everything becomes really reactive. And people within the organization don't feel empowered as they don't know the rules of engagement. To play the game, you have to know the rules of the game. And it's the same for a data strategy. If you don't know the bounds that you're operating in, what you can and can't do, you can't join in, essentially. Everybody's favorite, governance and security, often seen as really scary and really complex. And normally you see either teams are really, really cautious and lock everything down, and that really slows down progress, or sometimes things can be opened up. without enough control, and this can create risk as well. Another thing we see is scalability issues, so where the architecture simply can't meet the demands of the business and what the business wants to do next. Hopefully some of these resonate. I've worked with lots of different clients over the years in lots of different industries, and these themes repeat with surprising consistency. So if some of them resonate for you, you're definitely not alone in that. But the key point really is most of these challenges existed before AI. The only thing that's changed is the pace and how they get amplified and how they get accelerated. When decisions were slower, people had time to sense check things, to reconcile, to make corrections. But as the automation increases, those buffers are starting to disappear. So the organization moves faster, but the weaknesses become louder and they become more impactful as well. Just a quick check-in with everybody. If you've ever been in a meeting where two dashboards disagree and the conversation becomes around whose numbers are right, that's a foundations issue. And if you've ever had analysts spend most of their time cleansing data instead of generating insights, that's a foundations issue. One client I've been working with recently, and there's hundreds of hours spent on generating reports manually and manually reconciling reports. And that's time taken away from people doing real insightful, impactful work, human-facing work, that kind of valuable stuff, rather than compiling reports. And if you've ever avoided using a metric, maybe because you don't trust it, again, that is a foundations issue. The acceleration that we're seeing because of cloud and because of AI just makes it more hard to ignore. So this is where I want to reframe the problem a bit. What we're seeing is not a technology failure, it's a strategy foundation gap. Organizations invest in platforms and tools, and they often have ambitious language about being data-driven, but far fewer trust their own data consistently enough to use it as a basis for decisions, especially decisions where there's risk attached as well. So when leaders say we want trusted data, or we want a single version of the truth, or we want AI-ready foundations, those aren't technology requirements. They're organizational requirements, and these need to be realized across the business. They imply ownership, definitions, standards, processes for resolving issues, visibility of lineage and quality, and clarity on what actually matters to the business as well. The gap appears when the strategy says one thing, but the foundations behave differently, or the foundations just don't exist as well. And that's when the value of AI really starts to stall, and people become disillusioned with what impact AI can have within their business. And it's not because the technology isn't capable, but it's because it's being asked to operate on unstable ground. It's on shaky foundations. So from here, I just want to sort of clarify two concepts. What a real data strategy is, and what we mean by data foundations, and how they make the strategy come to life. So we all talk about data strategy. I think it's something that I hear lots of clients talk about. It's something we talk about a lot internally at Sopra Steria as well. But I think what it actually is can be misunderstood sometimes. So it's not simply a document you write and you store somewhere, and you tick the box and you say we have a data strategy. It's not a vision statement either, and it's not a set of principles on a slide. A real data strategy should answer some very simple but very impactful questions within your business. What data matters most to the organization? You can't say all data, you have to pick some data that is the most important. And that is data that actually drives outcomes and informs decision-making within the organization. And you might also have some regulatory requirements as well, depending on what sort of organization you're coming from. Who is responsible for it? And not in a sense of everyone's responsible or that team's responsible. You need a specific named person who knows what their responsibilities are and who knows what the role is. You can't just say you're a data owner now and expect someone to do something with that. But who is accountable for each data set, and who's accountable for the maintenance, the access, and the updates to that as well. It's important to know what decisions depend on it, because decisions define what good needs to look like. What risks need to be managed. So risks, I'm not just talking from a security perspective here, but it's about misinterpretation of the data, poor quality data, misuse, and gaps. We all know what happens when you use poor data to build AI. It just magnifies the problem, and that is a risk. And then finally, what outcomes are we optimizing for? Because if you don't know the outcomes that you're looking for, how do you know what to prioritize? And how do you know when you've reached a good state that you can move forward with as well? And here's the test on the slide, and it's a test I use with all different organizations that I speak to. If your data strategy doesn't influence how decisions get made day to day, then it isn't operating. And that means, does it change what gets funded, what projects get funded? Does it change what gets fixed first? Does it change who owns what? Does it change how issues are escalated and resolved? Does it change which metrics get used? And if the answer is no to these questions, then the strategy might exist on paper, but it isn't changing your outcomes. And it's probably time to have a bit of a review of that strategy. When a data strategy is actually operating effectively, what does it do? What does it look like? And it sets the direction through the 4 key facets that we've shown here. So around ownership, every critical data domain needs a defined and agreed owner, not a committee, an actual owner, a person, someone responsible for the continuous management and for resolving issues and escalating issues around that data. Often this can be split into a data owner and a data steward, one who looks after the sort of business context and the business outcomes of data, and one who manages it more on a day-to-day basis. And this is fine, but it does need to be a named person. Risks. So risks, as we all know, should be logged centrally, should be managed with a clear process. And that includes operational risk, regulatory risk, security risk, and data risk. Things like quality degradation, unclear definitions, a lack of lineage are real risks in an AI-enabled organization and will only be magnified as things move forward with AI. On the decisions side, so decisions, it needs to start with people to understand how they currently use their data today and how they want to use their data in the future. What decisions do they make day to day? It's really good to find out what people really hate about their job sometimes as well. So what annoys you the most in a day? And quite often that'll lead you to some really interesting pieces of information around how people interact with their data and what are their pain points and what do they not like doing. This is often where organizations discover that their data program is misaligned to the decisions that actually matter, or that people are spending a lot of time pulling together information that isn't actually necessary to the business. And then finally, outcomes. So if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you will very quickly lose direction and lose buy-in of senior sponsors as well. Once that momentum stalls, it's really hard to get it back and really hard to build that confidence again within the organization. Data should support the business outcomes. And for those outcomes, it should help you prioritize what to fix, what needs to be standardized, what should be automated, what should be governed. And really, place the focus on the outcomes provided. A good data strategy should reduce confusion because it creates a focus around your data. So what matters, who owns it, how do we manage it, and what decisions and outcomes are we optimizing for? It also lets people within an organization know how they can interact with data, and that promotes self-service and innovation. And this goes back to the decentralization of data skills that I was talking about earlier. You want everyone to feel empowered, everyone knows the rules, everyone can play the game and do self-service with their data. It's important, I think, to remember that data is generated by humans, by how humans interact with systems, by how they go about their lives. That is what generates data. So ultimately, it strongly reflects human behavior, human needs, wants, and decisions. And we all know there is no AI without data. For most organizations with legacy systems, siloed data, poor quality data, they're real blockers to progress with AI. So for me, the answer to that is around getting your foundations right and getting the data strategy right. Looking at why foundations matter. I know they can feel complicated and honestly boring sometimes. It's hard work, it's difficult work. But if I can just give you an analogy around why I think foundations are important. So last summer, I decided that I wanted to start gardening. I didn't really want to start gardening so much as I wanted flowers in the garden, and I wanted tomatoes that I could pick for my dinner, things like that. So I went out, bought some seeds, bought some pots, planted the seeds in the soil. I think I wanted them once maybe. And I just assumed that things would happen, that it would grow, that things would flourish. And, within a couple of weeks or something, I don't know how long tomatoes take to grow, but within a short frame of time, I would be able to get what I wanted out of this. Unsurprisingly, if any of you are gardeners, you will know that did not work at all. Not helped by the fact that I live in the northeast of England, where it's extremely windy and cold and quite rainy sometimes as well. But the gardening, it's not about just planting it and watering it once. It's about ongoing care and attention. It's about giving it the right conditions, the right structure, the right attention. And really, you can see where I'm going with this, but data works in the same way. You can't simply store it and expect value to just magically emerge from it without any care, structure, attention, and intention. And if the data has unclear definitions, if it's inconsistent, if it's fragmented, or if it's locked in silos, you will spend your time compensating for that rather than making actual progress. And what happens in most organizations is people start, propagating their own little gardens or window boxes. They come up with local fixes, local workarounds, and local spreadsheets that really surprisingly quickly become BAU often, because they still need to get their job done. And that is just demonstrating the failure of the strategy and a failure of the foundations. Everyone's working hard, but those foundations are not being seen. And the good news is, I suppose, on this one is that putting in the groundwork early will really dramatically increase the chance of success later down the line, especially as AI increases the dependency on reliable and explainable data. So foundations are not the boring prerequisite. They are really the thing that determines whether acceleration feels like confidence or chaos. Just some facts and figures around data foundations as well. So if you feel like yours aren't right, you're really not alone in this. So 40% of respondents reported that their foundation is either cannot support AI or is struggling to do so. Half of all people responding to the survey reported that their data is poor quality and unclean. And 10%, only 10%, consider that their data is AI ready. So why bother getting the basics right? As we've already said, it just helps you better understand your business. It helps you define your strategic direction, understand the gaps that you have, modernize your estate, maybe move off some of those legacy burning platforms that you might have. It helps to build trust in people in the data so that they can trust the decisions that are being made. They can trust what they're being told by the data. Building that data-ready culture and confidence across the organization, and helps to secure your future as well. It sets you up for things like bringing in automation and AI and whatever the future looks like for you within that organization. Most people might have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The idea is basically it's a pyramid, and the bottom of that pyramid must be realized before we can move up towards higher order outcomes. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very bottom, you've got things like breathing, food, water, shelter, and sleep, things that we need as humans just to exist, to live. And then moving up that becomes things all the way to the top, which is self-actualization. So reaching your sort of higher purpose, understanding what you're here for, morality, creativity, all those things that people strive towards. But without the bottom of that pyramid, you can't move up to the next level. So without breathing, food and water, you can't move up to safety and security. And without health, employment and family, you can't move up to those feelings of friendship and relationships and connection. And data and AI, to me, work in exactly the same way. So at the bottom of the data and AI hierarchy of needs, we have things around the collection of data. So you need to have data in order to do anything with it. And this is how data is generated. If you've got sensors, login, user-generated content, anything like that. And then we move up to how is it stored? What kind of pipelines do you have in place? What's the lifecycle management there? All the way up to the top. And at the very, very top is learn and optimize. So this is where AI sits. It's where the predictive forecasting sits, where deep learning sits. But you can't skip ahead. You have to complete every layer of that pyramid before you can move forwards. So hopefully this illustrates from a data perspective what those foundations are and really why they matter if you hope to do more sort of complicated and more valuable things in the future. This slide shows an end-to-end view of a typical data transformation journey that we've developed at Sopra Steria. I really like this frame and I use it a lot with clients because it challenges people to honestly assess where they are in that journey and where they want to be, where they want to get to, and what they might have missed out in between. It often sparks some debate with clients, which is great. These are the important conversations that we want to have. They say, I think transformation roadmap should come before impact assessment. Then great, let's talk about it. But it's the conversation that really matters here. And working through those conversations helps with the alignment around your data strategy and foundations. But often the journey starts around the mission and the vision. So what are you doing with your data? Moving through things like the data strategy, a data discovery, all the way through to the transformation roadmap, moving into things like governance and policies, not bureaucracy, but governance as guardrails is really important. And you'll see in the middle, the line splits into two, because it's not just a technology problem. So along the top, you have the more technical sort of data engineering, data modeling side of things. But the bottom is really the people side. So how are you bringing people within the organization on that journey as well? And then we move through things like the more traditional data visualization and business intelligence, all the way through to artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, insight-driven decision-making, where most organizations want to be. And it's not a once and done process either, right? This can be iterative. You can go back and reassess things that you've done previously. And it's an ongoing process to harness your data and make sure it's maintained and kept on top of as well. So when the foundations and the strategy don't align, this is really where the chaos starts to creep in. The acceleration doesn't create these problems, it merely exposes them, as we've already said. If your strategy says single version of the truth, but the foundations allow for duplication, that means multiple sources, conflicting numbers, and debates instead of decision making. And that's not where you want to be spending time. If your strategy says trusted data, but the foundations rely on manual checks, then do you really trust your data? It becomes dependent then on individual heroics and individual people, not on repeatable, assured processes. And if your strategy says AI ready, but the foundations can't evidence any lineage or quality, so when people say, where did this number come from, or can we explain why this changed, and the organization can't answer that confidently, then you're probably not AI ready, and AI will just accelerate any weaknesses and any gaps in that. This is why acceleration often feels really chaotic, I think, because the speed amplifies that misalignment. The faster you go, the more gaps show up, the higher the cost of getting it wrong becomes as well, especially when people start bringing in expensive AI tooling as well without getting those basic level things right. So how do we build better data foundations? And this shift for me is not, it's not about the tooling, it's not about the technology, it's about becoming intentional. And that means starting with the decisions you need to make and collecting or using data deliberately to support those decisions. So work backwards. What decisions do you need to make? What data will help us to answer those questions? Don't start with the data. Be clear on the purpose to start. So what decisions matter the most? What outcomes matter the most? And this is across the business, okay? This is no longer a technology problem. It's no longer an IT problem. Across the business, what decisions matter the most and what outcomes matter the most? And if you don't anchor this within a purpose, you end up trying to fix everything at once. You lose buy-in, you lose momentum, and nothing happens and you don't really get anywhere. Secondly, we're looking at improving data quality at the source. So a lot of organizations try to fix issues downstream in their reporting. And at this point, it's too late and it's also really expensive. The most effective approach is to fix issues where the data is created, in the processes, in the systems, and capture points there. The third is defining the ownership and the accountability. So I've already touched on this, but a named person who understands what their role is and understands what good looks like. And this is known throughout the organization. It should be really clear who is responsible for each data set and how you can approach them, what the process is. Simple governance, I really advocate for simple governance. It should be robust, it should be enough, but it should not be a blocker. And everyone should know the process around this governance as well. So it should have clear standards, clear definitions, guardrails, and this will enable use safely and consistently. But if the governance is too heavy, people will avoid it, they'll work around it, they'll dread having to go to the governance boards. But the goal is to put in place governance that allows for innovation, allows for creativity, allows for data use without blocking anything. Fifth, we need to make data accessible and understandable. So people should be able to find in plain English what a data set means, how you can use it, without needing specialist intervention around that as well. And this is where consistent definitions and cataloging really matters and is really important. Finally, invest in skills and data literacy. So you need to build that culture throughout your organization. Competence is not just a technical capability. It's whether people understand data well enough to interpret it, to question it, to act on it. And data literacy is what makes the foundations pay off in the end. And this is across the whole organization, not just within a data team. None of this is particularly glamorous. It's not as exciting as bringing in AI. But this is the work that really turns AI ambitions into real scalable operational value. So just to finish off from me, what does good look like? And this summarizes what I've talked through today. But when data strategy and your foundations align, things feel very different. When there are named owners, when the escalation routes are clear, and all of those good things, people trust the numbers. And when that happens, AI initiatives can scale with confidence rather than with caution. Strong foundations shouldn't slow down innovation. They allow strategy to move at speed. And this is the point that often surprises people. Foundations aren't the opposite of innovation. They are what make innovation safe and repeatable and reliable. And they reduce the amount of rework, the debates that you have in meetings, reducing the friction within an organization, and increase trust. That is the importance of data foundations. And across large and complex organizations, this alignment is consistently what separates progress from frustration. It's also what allows organizations to make the most of the data they hold and ensures that AI implementation is set up for success. So on that note, I will leave it there for today. We'll move into a Q&A section of the day. And then we've got a few little calls to action just to bring out at the end. But yeah, thank you, everyone.
Suzanne, that was awesome. I've had a few people pinging me saying that's been really useful presentation on data. Thank you. There have been a couple of questions. Nick Wood has been asking difficult questions about FDI, and yes, you can bring in data from other sources, but it isn't designed to do that, Nick. It provides you need to do some custom work to bring in the other data. So yes, you can, but it's not really been designed to do that, as opposed to Oracle Analytics Cloud, which has been designed from the ground up to be flexible connectors and modeling tools to bring that data in from other sources. So yes, you can, but it's extra effort and customization. There's another question, though, which is actually very relevant. And Suzanne, I think you've answered this question, though. And it's, how do you balance empowerment of the user community, especially with citizen data analytics and AI teams, develop across the enterprises with the governance to ensure compliance and that sort of level of control? Because once you put it out there, you can generate chaos in its own right. So just a few words about balancing empowerment with some guardrails around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. It's something that people can struggle with sometimes to get the balance right. I think really it's about governance being written in a way that facilitates innovation, facilitates community working together, people feeling empowered to use the data. And obviously governance is really important in terms of risk and managing risk. So it needs to be robust enough, but it needs to be written in a way that people can engage with it and can understand it. So write it in plain English and make it really accessible to people, have it held somewhere essentially on a team site, on a SharePoint, on an intranet site where people can go and find out what it is, because quite often governance becomes this sort of amorphous blob that people are just scared of in general because they don't understand what it is and what the process is. So if you can make it really clear and say, at this stage you need to speak to this person, at this stage you need to come to this meeting and present, and make sure that everyone is comfortable with that as well. And I think quite often having open door sessions where you can answer any questions can really help to build that culture where people feel confident and feel empowered, but are operating within safe guardrails as well.
Excellent. Absolutely agree with that. We've got, if there's any more questions, Michael, thank you for the feedback. If there's any more questions, then a couple of final slides. Which is our offer to your good selves. Sopra Steria provides an AI maturity assessment, whereby in a 10-minute survey that we're able to do is come away with actionable insights, where you can we will give you, with a few questions, give you homework if you like to go away, and obviously we can support you further as to what does that look like. So how do you prioritize that investment? Where should we be putting your money? What are some of the blockers that you've got in your organization now? We've been building this self-assessment up with a lot of organizations. So the feedback that we're getting is being fed back into this assessment model, so that the challenges that you're facing obviously are nominalized. We're able to build that into giving other organizations that clear understanding of where you are at this point and where you need to be focusing next. The next offer that we have for you as well, and please ping us to find out more, is that we provide a 90-minute foundation course for AI leaders in your organization. So it's a knowledge transfer. Who's the course for? CEOs, founders, senior leaders in your organisation. A heads up of how is it going to be working? How's it going to be impacting your organisation? Some of the language around what AI is about. There's an awful lot of different phrases and terminologies that get generated.
So I'll take this opportunity to say thank you very much, Susanna and James. That was really insightful, and I'm sure all the audience thought that too.
Perfect. Thanks very much. And Zahid, thank you to UKOUG for hosting.
Most welcome. Thank you all.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thanks everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.